Welcome back to another episode of Soul Hygiene, my brave and beautiful humans. I have with us our favorite social worker, Mr. Tony. And we're continuing our series on Castle, which is something that he deals with his, I guess, school-aged kiddos that he is over. I don't know what grades, but I know that he deals in the social work in the schools. So we're continuing. We've already touched base on a few of them. And so tonight we are continuing with social awareness,
Yes. hmm
which we've already discussed is kind of a big topic right now. Today is November 11th. Well, happy Veterans Day to my veterans. We salute you and everything you've done for our country. We also are how many days out from the election? I think
We are 6 days out from the
days
election.
out. 6 days
Mhm.
out from the election. And needless to say, it has been a tumultuous, um, I don't know. It has just been tumultuous. We'll just um, and here's one thing I want to say before we get started. And I'm glad that our topic tonight is social awareness, right? Because we should be social aware and we should have empathy and compassion and, be able to broaden our horizons and perspectives when dealing with people who don't agree with what we agree with, right? Our core values, you know, our system of values. Not everyone has to agree, but we should not ever be calling each other names. We shouldn't be putting people down for what they, believe. You know, we don't have to agree. That's the great thing about being an American and about having our individual rights, and living in a democracy, right? So that is, I was surprised at, I was reading down our list and I'm like, oh, wow, this fits right in with what we are going to talk about. So I'm going to let
Mhm.
Mr. Tony give us the broader definition of self awareness as described in the castle and tell us again what castle means. And then I'll let him start from there and we'll just see how the conversation goes as we always do. Welcome to the show again, Mr. Tony.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here. Yeah, so as far as Castle goes, just a friendly reminder for those who've been keeping up with our series here, our little mini series. It stands for the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. It is a private organization, so it's not a government entity or anything like that. However, I do work in the state of Illinois. I know you said you weren't quite sure what grade levels and stuff I work with, so I work in middle school, so that's at least in my building, is going to be sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. This particular school year, I have all of our seventh graders and a good chunk of our eighth graders, and then I do have a few other social workers in the building that help out with either our specialized program that we have in there for our students that have significant behavioral difficulties, or we also do, and we do have another social worker that takes the other half of the grade levels, which is nice. And again, I've mentioned this before, three other counselors in the building and a school psychologist. So we are truly blessed to be as well staffed as we are. We're sitting at just, oh, well, no, we're sitting about 750 students in our building. So quite a few kids,
Wow.
and all the families and stuff like that too. So it's not just the kids that we work with as school social workers, it's also the staff and their families, the students' families, that is. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. As far as the topic we're going to focus on tonight, that is going to be social awareness. So, just to kind of give the viewers or the listeners a quick recap, we've already touched on self awareness. So, that's going to be the ability to understand your own emotions, your thoughts, your values, and how they influence behavior. And it is a prerequisite skill to the next subject that we talked about, which was self management. Self management is the ability to manage your own emotions, your thoughts, your behaviors, and effectively deal with those different situations you might be in, achieve your goals and your aspirations. Tonight, we are going to be focusing on social awareness. And that is the ability to understand the perspectives of and empathize with others, including those with diverse backgrounds, different cultures, different contexts. And it is a prerequisite skill for another topic that we'll be talking about soon, which is relationship skills. So, this is kind of being able to read a room, have some empathy, be able to take different perspectives, doing your best to be culturally competent. Nobody's going to know every single thing about every single culture, but we do the best we can, and just kind of be able to navigate our world in the various situations we find ourselves in. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I appreciate you going over all that. Um, like I started out the show with, I think that social awareness is very important. I will, you know, give a caveat though, like we can't always understand everyone's perspective because our values may be different. We may not understand it, but we can approach it still with kindness and if we have to, empathy or, just a conversation instead of this back and forth negative rhetoric, right? I don't really like to get involved with that. I can say there have been a couple times in my life where before I started my healing journey where I got caught up in that. I mean, I think it's something that people just get caught up in, right?
Yeah.
But when you're really in touch with the decisions you make coming from your core values, truly who you are as a person and what you believe in, and coming from within, I think that your conversation becomes different. You know, for me, I find I've never been a person who likes confrontation. I will debate because I know what I believe. I have my opinions. I'm quite an opinionated person, but I know what I believe. I know what my core values are. I know what I stand for, right? But I'm not going to berate somebody for believing differently. If you want to
Yeah.
have a friendly debate, I'm for that. But I think that goes to the point of some people are just not social aware of what's around them. Like it's not about you. It's not even about, we'll say, about your party. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about you know just you and what your thoughts are. You have to look at a broader subject, right? And if you don't believe in something, okay, but we should not be in the um how should I say it? Like it should not be common for us to be putting people down for not believing what we do.
Yeah.
Right. So on my show, I am not afraid to say I'm a Christian. I believe in God, you know, um, that I try my best to live a Christian life, right? But I'm not going to sit here and berate someone who doesn't believe what I believe
Mm-hmm.
or hit them over the head and tell them, all these things and just preach at them. Because the one thing, what was that thing that we were always taught growing up? You attract bees with honey more than you do vinegar, right?
Yeah.
Bees
Absolutely.
and bees, we need bees to survive in this world, right? So I think that you learn that a lot more when you're older. How you
Mm-hmm.
speak to someone really shows, number one, who you are as a person, what your character is. Um, and yeah, it can say what you stand for, what you believe in. But first, it's going to tell them who you are. And if you have a problem talking to people or having people talk to you, you really need to do some soul searching and find out why can people not talk to you. So
Yeah.
I look at it like that from a personal standpoint, from being in traumatic relationships where it was that person was not socially aware whatsoever of their surroundings,
Yeah.
of people outside of themselves. And I think this also has to do, I think we had talked about the self-management aspect. Obviously, all of these lead into each other,
Hmm.
right? So in the self-management, your emotions, you need to be aware of who you are so that you can be socially aware. I don't believe a person who doesn't know who they are is socially aware of their surroundings because it becomes about them and
Yeah.
not about others. I saw something today on Facebook, and I don't say who posted it, and I don't even remember who posted it, but it was like, you know, you tell me to be kind, and yet you're calling me names.
Hmm.
You say to live like Jesus and to give to others and to, you know, be a giver of the world and not to receive. And yet, when something is done, you're the first one to lash out.
Hmm.
So that person is not obviously is not aware and is not socially aware. So I think the best people we have in the world who are socially aware know who they are. They have empathy, they have compassion, and they show kindness in ways that maybe others cannot. So that's kind of my first, you know, definition of how I believe social awareness ties into the world.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on for sure. And, the way I like to approach it, a lot of times, for me, it's working with some of my students that maybe are on the spectrum or just in general have really poor social awareness. Some, but for those who don't know, and again, every person with autism is different. So I don't want to lump everybody in a bucket or anything like that. But generally speaking, those who are on the autism spectrum really do have difficulty with social awareness. They don't understand how to read social cues. They can't really depict how somebody is feeling based off of body language, that sort of stuff. Reading a room is very difficult for them. So that tends to be the skills that I focus on in a school environment, just teaching the kids like, hey, this is how we can read body language, and we'll watch like video clips and stuff like that. Um, but as far as, adults and stuff go, it definitely, I think, still very relevant, especially, we're 6 days out from the election, and I too have seen all the banter back and forth online. And just full disclosure, I knew the candidate I wanted to win wasn't going to win anyways, as I wasn't picking one from either of them. So I'm like, okay, I've already got acceptance with this moving into it, which was fine, But then it's kind of interesting being from that third party, just observing the interactions back and forth between people that I've known for quite a long time. And you're right. I mean, people are name calling and doing all sorts of stuff, and I'm just like, wow. And it's out there in public for everybody to see too. That's the other thing. I'm like, don't you guys see what you're doing here? Like, a future employer might be able to come back one day and look at all this lovely banter back and forth and go, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so there's some of that I see too, and just, I think this is something that we're taught in the social work field, is to, have unconditional positive regard for our clients, right? And something that I've learned too in just working in schools, like, the kids are doing the very best they can. They are coming in, and we just need to assume that they are giving the best effort they possibly can for the situation that they're in. They may not be meeting the standards that we want them to meet because, maybe they're stayed up super late the night before because there was an argument going on in their house or something like that. Or, maybe they're really hungry because they didn't have breakfast in the morning before they came to school or what have you. So these are the things that we as the adults in that situation have to kind of take into account and go, okay, my social awareness needs to be on point to kind of look out for these things in my kiddos and say, like, okay, what's going on? Or even just knowing some of my kids' trauma backgrounds too, going, okay, that's probably a situation that's going to trigger them. Let's, prep them for it and front load them, or maybe we can try to avoid it. Not that I always encourage avoiding and stuff like that, but sometimes they're just not, there to kind of deal with it. And kind of applying that into this context, I knew when and I worked the election as an election judge too, so I didn't even get to like keep track of like who was winning and all that fun stuff during the day, but I knew the next morning when I woke up there was probably going to be about 50% of the people in my life that were not going to be very happy, and the other 50% were going to be overjoyed. Didn't know where it was going to land, right?
Mhm.
So in that situation too, it's just like, okay, yeah, I want to be able to, be positive for the people that are happy and what have you, and at the same time be mindful that, there are definitely going to be people out there that are really hurting right now for various reasons, and just trying to treat them with kindness and respect, even though it may not have been reciprocated before.
And since we're on the topic of the election,
Yeah.
it amazes me that, you know, you want someone, if you truly, truly believe in something, right?
Hmm.
You want someone to believe that with you. If you didn't believe it, I mean, if you believe something, you want others to know it.
Right.
But the way to get others on your side is not to berate them, is not to call them names, is
Right.
not to call the candidate names or whoever, right?
Right.
It's
Hmm.
not to delete people from your Facebook just because you think your values are not aligned. How do you know what that person is going through and why they feel the way they feel?
Right.
And I will give an example because I think it's very pertinent to what we're talking about. Um, One candidate ran on abortion,
Hmm.
right? I don't believe in abortion except in extenuating circumstances, obviously. But you don't know what a person has gone through in their life to believe what they believe about that topic.
Hmm.
And so to group them all together and be like, you're this and you're that, and call them names, how is that kind? How is that showing compassion? It's yes, does someone else have different morals than you and different values? Probably. I think we all do. I think
Hmm.
that's where the perspective comes into play,
Yep.
right? Um, but that doesn't mean that they will never believe what you believe, or you can't ever talk to them in a kind, compassionate way and be like, this is what I believe and this is why, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like social awareness really is lacking in our country,
Yeah.
very much so. And I wish that more people would see that they would have that self management skill to be able to have that social awareness skill. So
Hmm.
when you're in the school, do you see that um, your youngins can be taught to be socially aware?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I
Yeah,
definitely I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without their capacity for being able to learn this stuff for sure.
right,
And
right,
it's even something as simple as like they get super mad at their teacher or something like that for something that they said or something that they did, and it's like, okay, well, hold on a second, like I'll break down the situation with the kid, and obviously most of the time I wasn't actually there to see the situation unfold, so I asked the kid like explain it to me in their terms and what have you, and then I can kind of pick it apart and go, okay, well, wait a minute, don't you see like right here at this point in your conversation with the teacher, like maybe they were asking you to do this for this particular reason or that particular reason, and they sometimes they'll stop and go, yeah, that actually does kind of make sense. Like, oh, and then they'll do the whole, I can't believe I did what I did thing, sort of
right,
thing. And then sometimes too, depending on the situation, their self management isn't so great, so they're not quite there yet to hear that, and that's totally okay. A perfect example is I had a student in my after school martial arts program recently almost get into a fight during gym. And he, prior to the fight, had been kind of like pushing, or the almost fight, I should say, had been pushing around another student, just one of his friends, kind of jokingly playing around and stuff like that. And another student saw that, came up to my student and pushed him real hard, and it almost led to a fight. And luckily, the teachers were there and they saw everything and separated them and what have you. And my student in my program after school was, explaining the situation to me and whatnot. He's like, "Yeah, I don't understand why he came over and why he did what he did." I'm like, "Well, there's a couple possibilities that I'm thinking of, and one of them I'm like, well, maybe he saw you joking around with your friend, and maybe he was just trying to joke around with you and took it too far. Or the other one maybe is, hey, maybe that friend that you're joking around with, maybe that's his friend too, and he didn't like you doing that and thought that you were gonna like get into something more serious. Well, lo and behold, that was the actual case. It was the second one, and the other social worker that does the other part of the caseload in my building was able to kind of process that with that student, which was great. But I'm like, see, like you don't know, and if you don't like open your mind to the possibilities of why somebody's doing what they're doing, and for me to get bringing it kind of back to the adult perspective is even if I'm talking, especially I should say, when I'm talking with somebody that I don't agree with on a given topic or what have you, I try to approach it from the lens of, okay, they've reached a way different conclusion than I have on this particular topic for whatever reason. Um, but why are we getting there? Like, where are they coming from? Being naturally curious versus, pointing fingers and name calling and even focusing on attacking the argument, which I mean, if you're going to debate somebody, that would be my preferred thing to do. Don't attack the person, attack the argument, so to speak. But even then, try to figure out why they have come to their conclusion that they have, and kind of being able to backtrack that road. Like, I'll give an example for me recently. As we've talked about before, I like shooting guns, so I'm pretty pro gun as far as that goes. There's plenty of people that are not. Um, and we start talking about things like, okay, well, should staff be able to be armed in schools or something like that? I'm pro, most people are not. Um, in a topic like that, it's like, okay, well, where are they coming from versus where am I coming from? Like, I'm coming from the lens of I want to be able to do that so I can keep my kids safe and etc. And in their head, like all guns are bad and like they're going to cause more harm than good and that sort of thing. Or maybe the person that's carrying isn't going to be competent enough or what have you. Can I understand those arguments and those concerns? Absolutely. And I validate all of that 110%. Those are things to absolutely be concerned about. And, then I have my own counterpoints to those arguments and what have you, but at least I can come and understand where they're coming from. And I can do that perspective taking and I can empathize like, hey, this isn't an evil person that wants to deny me my rights. It's somebody that's just genuinely trying to help people. We just have different solutions on how to do that. And that's totally okay.
Right. No, I love that. And I like how you said, debate the issue, not the person.
Mhm.
Like you don't have to argue with the person. Argue about the issue. Like you that's where your difference is. Like
Mhm.
why do you have and here's the thing about why do you have to delete people out of your life because they disagree with you?
Right.
That's part of a human right to have your
Mhm.
own opinion and not be like everybody else. Why do I have to be like you and why do you have to be like me? That's what makes the world great and big because of all the different, the differences we have, the different perspectives we have. So for me, it's kind of touchy because I have had friends who have been like, you didn't vote for my candidate, we're done.
Yep.
And I
And I
maybe
have too.
had two conversations with them that year.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, I'm deleted from their life. And okay, I mean, what am I going to say?
Right. I mean, that person's
It's,
going to have to make their own
yeah.
decisions on that. But
And
but
that's
I
another thing.
agree.
Like, don't get upset about it. Let them do what they need to do to feel
Mhm.
good about themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
They have their own perspective. But here, this is why I'm glad we've talked about other topics before this. The
Hmm.
self-awareness is so essential. Like
Yes.
I think that was the first thing we had talked about in this
Hmm.
series. And
Yeah.
I cannot tell you, like, you cannot have self-management and social skills and social awareness and good relationships and be accountable and responsible unless you have self-awareness.
Yep, it all starts
You
there.
it all starts there. And so, as we gradually go down these topics, we always have to go back to the first thing we talked about, right?
Mhm. Yeah, they're
Know
building
who you
blocks.
are. Know who you are. This is your foundation, right?
Yeah,
Know who you are. Know
yeah,
what your core values are. And in the midst of that, be aware that not everyone's going to agree with you. And that's okay.
yeah,
It is
absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely, and kind of building upon that too. Like, there are some days that I'm just drained emotionally, mentally, or what have you from work, and normally I would check my social media stuff at night, and then there are some days and I'm just like, sorry guys, like that's not happening. Like for my own mental well-being, I'm just not going to engage in
Right.
this tonight, or what have you. Or even I'll pop in there, I'll start doing my thing. Maybe I'll start engaging in one of those debates or what have you, and my self-management will kind of creep in and go, okay, you know what? You're starting to get like to that point where you're getting tempted to get into the personal attacks or what have you. Time to
Yeah.
log off, or
Yeah.
time to go do something else and maybe come back to this later, or it'll always be there the next day, right?
Right.
um,
Right.
and that kind of ties into that social awareness piece. So they are truly, they are building blocks that are just going to keep kind of going amongst themselves here. So
Right. Right. Well, I'm
absolutely.
really glad this was the topic today because I think we needed it. And listen, I'm not saying that you have to not have a voice, that you don't have to have an opinion, that you don't have to disagree with someone. Just do it in the right way. Don't ruin your reputation and your character and integrity by lashing out at someone that doesn't agree with you. There's a lot of things I don't agree with that have happened in this world. And recently, during COVID or like things that happened 4 years ago,
Hmm.
lots of things I don't agree with. I can voice that as long as I am not bashing other people and calling them names.
Yeah,
Be pointed, put your opinion out there, but be kind for goodness sake. Just be kind. If you want
yeah,
to have a broader perspective, have a broad perspective. That's good to look at people and be like, I may not agree with your choices, but you're still a human being.
right.
You still have a soul. You can still be self-aware and have self-management. Let me show you what I did. And that's what this whole podcast is about, right? I was not a perfect person. I am not a perfect person,
Hmm.
but I'm learning so much and becoming self aware and having self management helps me turn around and show people, okay, you don't have to be this way, right?
Yeah.
You just don't. People
Hmm.
are people and they are God's creation, whether you agree with what they're doing or not. So love them where they are. And if they want to debate with you, debate the topic. Don't lash out at the person.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I think again, it's just important to do the best you can. You don't have to agree with the other person's perspective, but at least try to understand it. Where are they coming from? Why do they think that what they think? And you'd be surprised. Some people, especially again with these online debates that we frequently find ourselves in, they just want to be heard. They want to know that somebody understands their point of view and where they're coming from on a given issue, even if that person doesn't agree with them. That's totally fine.
Right,
But and part of that is being respectful. Be like, hey, I just want to make sure I understand your point of view. You think A, B, C, D. Is that right? Yep. Or no, you got C wrong or whatever. Okay, cool. Well, tell me about that again. Like, let me understand what's going on here.
right,
I really want to understand where you're coming from so I can at least, you know, make my own decision on whether that's something I agree with or not. And I agree with you being, firm in your values and what have you is definitely a good thing. But two, being open to hearing at least what other people's values are. I've been surprised on more than one issue. Over the years, I've definitely changed a lot of my thoughts and opinions on given issues or even beliefs overall, and that's totally okay too. And I wasn't able to do that and grow as a person had I not had those social awareness skills to be able to practice empathy and understand other people's perspectives and points of view on things.
And I think that's a good place to end the show because I want to just reiterate something you just
Yeah,
said. We have to grow and learn to be better people. And
yeah,
we cannot do that if we are not socially aware of what is around us, right? Or with of the people around us. I grow every day because I want to learn every day. I want to learn something new. And we can't learn something new just by being stuck in who we are. That comes with learning what's around us, learning different perspectives, learning what other people believe. It may solidify what we believe, but we
sure.
may see a different point of view that we didn't think about.
Yeah,
So really, I do encourage my listeners to be kind, be compassionate towards people that you don't agree with. And you never know that something may click and you may realize something, a different perspective, and be like, oh, and have an aha moment. And that may change your life. One thing may change your life, but you have to be socially aware in order to grow, in order to learn. And that's what we should be doing every single day. Any
absolutely.
parting words and words of wisdom for us?
No, I completely agree with you, and I would encourage, your viewers and your listeners to do exactly that, to keep an open mind, to at the very least go into, conversations in these situations that are very tough right now. Just trying to understand the other person's perspective. Again, you don't have to agree with them, but just being able to understand where they're coming from, have some compassion for them, empathy for them, be respectful of them, even again if you don't agree with what their thoughts are, or what have you. It is a very divisive election this election was, but even just in general, even if we're not talking about the election, like when you find yourself in a situation where you're just agreeing with somebody about something, just try to empathize with them. And at the end of the day, remember that as another human being that you're talking to or you're typing your argument out with, or what have you, or you're
Yeah,
on the phone with for customer service and they can't get you the thing that you need, or whatever the situation may be. It's another human being on the other end of that. So, just treat them the way that you would want to be treated.
right, right. I love that. Well, we are going to end at this point, and we have another recording to do. But I really appreciate your perspectives on and bringing this, kind of to us so that we can talk about it. I think it's really important that we have these building blocks, and even as adults, we may know them, but I think we forget them.
Hmm.
And it's good to be reminded to be self aware, to have self management, and to have that social awareness. So I really appreciate you as always. And I appreciate everyone being here for another episode. We will see you later.